Thank you for listening to the BJJ Podcast. We'll be bringing you Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and good times. We hope to flatten your Jiu-Jitsu learning curve, help you get the most out of your grappling ability, and meet your goals both on and off the mat.
Welcome back, my friends, to the BJJ Podcast. I'm Joe Thomas. I'm on here with my good buddies Byron and Gary. This week on the show, we have Adam Wheeler. He's been on the show before, and he has a book out. There will be a link to that in the show notes. Check it out. I hope you enjoyed the interview. Byron, I hope you're doing okay. And I don't know if you talked to Gary in the last day or two, but he sounds a little bit weird. He just got back from a week's worth of yodeling lessons in Sweden. And he's doing a lot of yodeling, and he has a bit of a Swedish accent. Byron, how are you doing? Have you talked to him lately?
Yeah, he's hit and miss, but the accent is definitely there. It's going to be a little different for us, because this is an audio thing. So listeners, this is going to be Gary you're hearing. But, compared to last week, we had the video come up on YouTube. So if you enjoyed that, we're glad we could do that for you. But this week it's just audio, but you do have Gary. Gary, how you doing? How you feeling? How was your yodeling lessons?
Yodelay.
Okay.
So they were brief. Anyway, but quality, that was good. So thanks, Gary. Hope you're doing all right up there.
Yes, I definitely am. Yodelay.
All right. Well, yeah. Guys, anyway, Adam Wheeler is a friend of the show. I just finished his book a couple days ago, and it was a really good book. If you're interested in history of Olympics, history of wrestling, if you're interested in somebody overcoming some pretty big hurdles in life, not just on the mats, just even as a kid, he had a rough start to things, and just kind of learned about his journey and where he has come from and gotten so far. It was a very good read. And you know what, guys, I can't remember the last movie that I got emotional at, or fought back tears at. I don't that's
I remember it was with Roadhouse. I remember you watching Roadhouse, you got a little emotional.
little bit. But, I'm reading this book, and there's some pretty significant things that's happened to him as a kid. And when he actually made the Olympic team, and he reached that goal just to make the team, I started getting a little teary-eyed. I was like, oh man, this is amazing. And I knew he would gonna make the team. It's no secret.
That's awesome.
He's an Olympic medalist. But just to read that, and then read the response from his mother and his wife and his supportive team, I was like, wow. Like I started getting chilled, and it was really amazing. Similar, when he actually wins a medal, and he's got some other pretty amazing stories that happened after that. He was involved in law enforcement for a while, and he's got some pretty amazing stories with that. Difficult times as well, and now he's moved on to the fire department. He's to the fire service, I guess would be a better way to say that. And we share some common ground there, I guess would be an easy way to say that. But it's just to hear his journey and what he's done to get to where he is today, really amazing, and honored to have a guy like Adam back on the show. Strong recommendation for the book. He talks a little bit about jiu-jitsu, but not a ton. It's mostly about his Olympic wrestling experience, and that's probably the first 2/3 or 3/4 of the book, and then he talks about law enforcement career and moving on to the fire service. And he talks a little bit about jiu-jitsu, how he's really used that as an outlet to stay competitive and enjoy getting that mat time that's a little bit harder to do in the wrestling room as you get older. So yeah, really enjoyed the book, learned a lot from it, and strong recommendation. Check it out. There'll be a link in the show notes. We don't get any sort of commission or anything like that, but just wanted to help out a friend who wrote a really cool book and shared his story.
Yeah, a lot of great lessons in that book. So check it out if you're into reading. If you're not into reading, you should be. So maybe go on and get that book and start a new habit and learn some lessons. speaking of lessons, I've got an off the mat lesson. We'll drag back on the mat. So we had the BJJ event in Wichita. As of the recording of this episode, it was a week ago for us. And man, we had a good time. As always, Jake Fox is as good a host as you're going to get. We did this at Fox Fitness in Wichita. We had Professor Gina Franson and Professor Samir Chantry and Professor Byron Jabara, 3 quality seminars. Had a really good time. Finished up Sunday afternoon. I got on a plane to Houston, had one stop to make in St. Louis, changed planes there. Got on the plane from St. Louis to Houston and fell asleep. And I was wore out after the weekend. We were supposed to land in Houston about 11:30 that night, and man, I was asleep. My wife nudges me. She's got to get up and go to the bathroom, and as she's coming back from the bathroom, I hear the pilot say, "Welcome to New Orleans." And I fully expected to be in Houston at this point. So, yeah, we landed in New Orleans, got fuel, got headed back, and got to Houston. And all's well that ends well. So how I relate to this jiu-jitsu a couple of ways, and one of them is that when I buy an airline ticket, I'm putting the control of my destiny in somebody else's hands. I want to get to Wichita. I want to get back to Houston, and I know there's going to be some stops, and I know they're going to kind of dictate when we leave and when we get there. But I go ahead and I make that contract with them. And it's similar when you start jiu-jitsu. The school that you start with, the instructor that you sign up under, they're going to have a lot to do with how your journey goes, and it's important to choose wisely. So put some thought into that. We talk about it a lot on the show. We've got some resources for you. So that's very important. And the other thing I would say is that I did get to Houston, and part of the reason is because I didn't get off the plane in New Orleans. I didn't say, oh, this isn't where I want to be, so I'm going to get off. Or I didn't say, oh, I always wanted to see New Orleans. I'm going to go take a sightseeing trip. I stayed on the plane, and I got where I was going. So in your jiu-jitsu journey, you're going to take there's going to be twists and turns, but you stay on the plane, and you get where you're going.
Joe, great advice. I know we talk about jiu-jitsu all the time. How do you get better at jiu-jitsu? You show up. You stay on task. You keep going on that journey, and you just keep going and going and going, and it's a long time, a long journey. Like you said, your instructor, you've put your trust in that instructor to keep you on that journey. Your mental wellness and everything is going to keep you going on that journey, but just keep going. Be on that journey, and you will get better. You will, learn more and more about jiu-jitsu and have fun.
Yeah, Joe, so you were leaving the BJJBrick camp when this happened. Thanks for not blaming us for the airport miss.
Oh, he did blame you.
I was somewhere between St. Louis and Houston. So.
But yeah, that's things like that happen, and there's a lot of things that are outside of our control. But,
and we always talk about trying to better ourselves, and I have to admit that is something I have got better at. Little things would stress me out, and stuff that's outside of my control. And I can talk about what I've been going through here recently, with my basement flooding a couple times. We had another 4 inches of rain in a 30-minute span here a few days ago, and it looked like it, may get back to that point. And I will tell you, years ago, 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago, I would have been stressed. I would have ruined my whole day. It would have, really, it's something I can't control. And, I was so proud of the first time I went through this flooding that, it's going to happen. It's nothing I can do about it. Why get upset? Let's do some work and, salvage as much as I can, keep the damage as less as possible. But it's going to happen. And it was just kind of neat to see how I've grown from what I was years ago. And I do attribute a lot of that to jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu has helped me grow as a person. This podcast and, talking to you guys about different things that comes our way, adversity that's going to hit us all the time, as just talking about it has helped me look at different ways to cope with it. And there's nothing I can do. Joe, is on a plane circling Houston. He wants to get home, but I hate to tell you, it's out of his control. running low on fuel, can't land, divert him somewhere else, and he gets home 6 hours later. He could cry about it all he wants. He could yell, scream at the pilot, at the gate workers, but it's not going to do him any good except make that person's day miserable and make Joe's day miserable. So, we just got to deal with the cards that are dealt and try to make the best of it.
So, Gary, I think what you're saying is as long as you stick with it and you keep working hard and you get better every year that you do jiu-jitsu, eventually everybody can get a black belt, right?
I totally believe that. I really believe that if you just keep going, it's going to be there down the road. Don't quit and just keep plugging along.
But it's not, it's nice to have that, like, eventually it'll happen, but that's not an end to the journey either.
Oh, it's not the end of the journey.
It's the achievement of the skill level.
Yeah,
when I say getting a black belt, I don't mean that there's any big distinction between the color of the material around your waist, but you definitely have.
Yeah, that's a lot of people's goal. Their goal is to get that black belt. And, when you're first starting, you're thinking, boy, that black belt is so far away. Will I ever get it? And, there's that destination. There's that journey. It's a long journey. We just got to keep going. We're going to run into a whole bunch of walls, a whole bunch of brick walls, cinder brick walls, cinder block wall, cardboard, setups. We're going to run into everything. And it's our job to get past them and keep on course. And we are going to have days where we don't feel like we're doing great, where we feel like nothing's in our control, and we could easily get upset and storm off the mats and never come back. But just keep plugging with it. And your goals, it's goals for anything. It's not just jiu-jitsu goals, relationship goals, family goals, work goals. Just keep plugging away. Have that attitude and have an attitude that nothing's going to stop me. Have positive attitudes and just keep going. And the world is there for our taking.
Gary, you're 100% right about all the various obstacles that we might run into, but I've got tools in my tool bag and tools in my toolbox and tools in my tool basket, and I've got tools everywhere to deal with those obstacles thanks to jiu-jitsu. So I feel like I'm in pretty good shape.
What would be a tool that somebody could use if they're if they're just starting jiu-jitsu?
I have no clue, Byron.
Maybe a book, preferably one that they didn't actually have to read themselves or somebody else read to them.
That's good for jiu-jitsu people.
We do have a audio book, your first year of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and maybe you're somebody who's never listened to this podcast. You're here because Adam Wheeler is here, and you're a wrestler, and you're interested in that. That's great, wrestle. But if you feel like that your season in life of wrestling is kind of ending, you could do something similar to what Adam did, is make a transition to jiu-jitsu or nogi submission wrestling, which is, we also call it jiu-jitsu. And we have a audiobook. It's $11.99. It's your first year of Brazilian jiu-jitsu. It really will help you get, going in the right direction, help you jump over some of those hurdles. And if you're learning like Gary, knock over a few hurdles as you go, but you're still going. And it's just to help you smooth out that bumpy pathway that we're all on. And it's about 2.5 hours long. If you're going to buy one book today, go buy Adam's. go buy Adam Wheeler's book, Believe and Achieve: Overcoming Obstacles to Excel. But if you are just starting jiu-jitsu and you already have his book, go check out ours. And especially if you need a little bit of help in your journey. And I think that's something that I wish I had when I started jiu-jitsu, is just kind of a little bit of a guidebook to what to expect my first year and how to get through some of the difficult things that I'll face.
Byron, you're talking about, the obstacles you're going to hit. And, Joe, you talked about your off the mat lesson, and, you guys just got, that strength, the struggle that you went through, to get to that point, to keep going where you're at right now. And it kind of reminds me of a quote by Arnold Schwarzenegger. And everybody knows who Arnold is, former bodybuilder, mayor of California, or governor of California, movie star. The guy's done it all. But what he said was, strength does not come from winning. Your struggles develop.
Gary. It doesn't sound like Arnold's saying this.
I can't. I'm not good with voiceover, so I'll let you do it, Byron.
No, I'm going to go right ahead. I can't.
No, you got it, Byron.
I also don't have an Arnold impression.
Okay. No, I am terrible with voiceovers, I guess you say. As you could tell by my yodeling earlier. Not very good at that either. But, there was another obstacle that was just put in front of me. Byron, so kindly, rudely interrupted me.
I just can't believe you were going to read an Arnold quote and not say it like Arnold would.
And took me off task, but I'm going to go right through that hurdle. I'm going to find a way around it. But strength does not come from winning. Your struggles develop your strength. When you go through hardships and decide not to surrender, that is strength. And it's everything we've been talking about today. When you go through hardships and decide not to surrender. And Joe, you went through a hardship. You got home much later. You got thrown off task. Byron, I know when you were looking. I'm not even going to go down that path because I want to keep this G rated here. But it's that mindset that we are not going to surrender. We're going to keep going. It's a long road. We're going to find a way. That grit, that determination. Let's go back to Adam Wheeler. If I remember right, I did not sit down in this interview that Byron just did, so I haven't heard it yet either. But if I remember right, when Adam would talk to us before, I think like his first year of wrestling, he never won a match.
He only won one.
Okay, so he did win one.
Yeah.
And here's a guy who won one match his first year. He didn't quit. He decided not to surrender. He had that attitude. And I know, Byron, you talked a little bit about, the struggles he went through and, everything he overcame. But, here's a guy who became an Olympic wrestler, and he's now become a black belt in jiu-jitsu. The guy's done everything. He just does not quit. He doesn't surrender. He's got goals in mind, and he finds a way to get to those goals. Him, me, Joe, Byron, all our listeners, we're all going to have stuff that are going to pop up at us. It's like a game of Space Invaders. We have all these, aliens coming at us, but we'll find a way around it. So just keep going. Just, keep your mind focused, and we'll get to the end.
I've heard the phrase "life is like a box of chocolates," but I never have heard life is like a game of Space Invaders.
Yeah, you're targeting that 45 to 55-year-old demographic with that one.
Tell me, Joe, you did not love Space Invaders like I did.
Of course, I'm right in the middle of that demographic.
Yep.
7-Eleven with a big Slurpee and a couple of quarters.
Joe, they just put in a new arcade here, and so the first time I go to the arcade, and it's kind of cool because you pay $10 and you can play all day long if you want. So I take my kid down there on a Saturday afternoon, when it first opened, and I was expecting a whole bunch of little kids. No, it was all people, 45 to 55, and all the new games nobody wanted. I'm waiting in line for Pac-Man. I'm waiting in line for Space Invaders, Techno Bowl, all those games. That's what I was there to play.
There you go.
That's funny. They know who their market is. I do like in this quote, your struggles develop your strengths. And that, I think that just says it right there. And you could, when you read Adam's book, you'll see that happen time and time again. I think if he had it's impossible to go back and say for sure anything, but if he had maybe an easier growing up, or maybe easier times in school, or, didn't have some of the hardships that he had, it'd be hard to say he'd be exactly where he is today. And accomplish the things that he's accomplished. So sometimes nobody enjoys the process of just struggling or dealing with a hard time in their life, but in the long run, your struggles can help you develop your strengths. So, good quote, Gary. A little bit lacking on the Arnold impression, but still pretty
guys,
good.
Just give me a second, Byron. I got to go somewhere. I'll be back.
We'll all be back. We'll roll the interview with Adam Wheeler. He is the most interesting grappler in the world.
He once grappled a polar bear to test out his bear hug. He once choked out an opponent using only his Wi-Fi connection. When he models for gi companies, he uses only his bad side. He only gets ringworm on his ring finger.
I don't always listen to podcasts, but when I do, I prefer the BJJ Podcast. Stay listening, my friends.
All right, my friends, I'm happy to bring Adam Wheeler back to the BjjBrick Podcast. Adam has done a lot of things. He's an Olympic medalist for Greco Roman wrestling, jiu-jitsu black belt, now author. So it's kind of, I saw that you had a book out, and I was excited about this, and I know you have some really interesting and some challenges that have happened in your life, and I think you share these in this book, so I'm really excited to bring you back on the podcast and talk with you about this book. So Adam, welcome back to the show.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you having me back.
We've talked a lot in the past about, jiu-jitsu and wrestling and even police work and firefighter work as well, and we might dip our toes back into that pool at some time, but I just want to know a little bit, what was the main idea behind writing a book like this?
I kind of have a unique story, and I know that we've kind of talked about it a little bit in the previous podcast about how I started wrestling. I started, late in comparison to other guys who have accomplished the same things, and I started in high school, literally got to my first practice, couldn't run a quarter mile without stopping, couldn't do a single good quality push-up, very fat, out of shape, weak, couldn't, I just couldn't really keep up with the demands of wrestling. And I remember that season, I went in, I was the worst kid on the team, and I lost every single match except for one match in wrestling. And I think about that now and what I ended up doing in the long term, but my story is kind of a story of somebody who didn't really succeed. I never really had success as far as I did win some tournaments in high school eventually and stuff like that, but I never qualified for the state wrestling tournament in high school. After high school, joined the military, and I never won an Armed Forces Championships. I got my butt kicked for the first 3 years badly by pretty much everybody, and never won an Armed Forces Championships. And then I started wrestling on the national level, never won a national title. Started wrestling on the international level, never won a major international tournament. Never won a world team trials or an Olympic trials or anything like that until 2008, when the year that I ended up making the Olympic team, winning the Olympic trials, and then earning the bronze medal in the Olympics. But it was, I thought my story was a little unique in the fact that I wasn't having constant success. I was having a little bit of success followed by constant failures, but I was driven and continued to believe in myself. And I had a good backing of friends and family that believed in me. And, that inspired me also to continue on and never quit. So the book is, I'm putting it out there as if you stick with it and you never quit and you try your best, great things are possible. And I'm kind of proof of that by earning, for our country, I'm the last American to earn an Olympic medal in Greco wrestling. And really it's just because I never quit. And so I try to portray that in the story, along with the things I learned along the way and how it translates to life after wrestling as well, now that I'm coming up on 11 years past when I wrestled in the Olympics. So I try to use my experience from that and relate it to my career and my being a father and all that kind of stuff, and just everyday life after sport, really.
And you had quite a few challenges early on in life, just before you were wrestling and struggling to, get that second win. You went 1-15 your freshman year in high school. What were some of the earlier things you had just as a kid that you were presented with and had to work with?
So when I was a baby, I was 11 months old. I was diagnosed with this rare blood disease where my kidneys shut down. I was put on dialysis. Obviously I don't remember this. I was 11 months old, but just kind of started having some health complications early on. My family members didn't think I was going to make it. My mom and my dad's mom, my grandma Marguerite, were at the hospital every day, and it was a struggle for them. And, of course I hear this later in life and how they got through it and stuff like that. And it just kind of makes me think, like, from the beginning, I had to start, I started with some struggles, and eventually I got over that and was overall pretty healthy. My parents got divorced when I was really young. I think I was 3 when they got divorced. So I was raised by a single mom, and my mom, she was working multiple jobs at a time and things like that just to try to put food on the table. But, so as a younger kid, I just remember we were always hustling around, going from place to place, and we ate a lot of fast food, no real healthy nutrition. We didn't have a lot of money, so my mom would make like big casseroles with, cheap ingredients, but of course we ate them. We loved them. And I was just never had like an upbringing of health and fitness or anything like that. And I was a good athlete, like a pretty good athlete naturally. I wasn't the best, I wasn't the worst, but I was a fairly big, strong, fast kid. And I was a baseball player. My mom, even with how busy she was, she always put us in all the sports. Like year round, I was playing sports as a kid, but baseball was kind of my thing. And when I was 11 years old, I ended up sliding into home during like one of the first games of the season, and I broke my femur bone, which was kind of a freak accident, just the way I slid, the way I landed, just the right angle, because you have to have a lot of pressure to break your femur bone. And I was able to do that sliding into home. And, long story short, I was unable to walk or do any physical activity fully for about 6 months when that happened. And so I went from being a fairly athletic to not, and I didn't really start working on improving myself physically at all until I started wrestling in high school. And when I started wrestling in high school, the very first practice, and I know I've said this in probably the previous podcast and stuff, but I literally couldn't run one lap around the track, a quarter mile, without stopping. I couldn't do one quality push-up. I was the worst kid on the team. And just kind of, it was rough for me to start. And if you ask me right now why I stuck with wrestling, because I was a good baseball player. I kept playing baseball even after I broke my leg, and I was always, on the all-star team and started and one of the better baseball players in the area that I grew up in. But I started wrestling my freshman year. My grades failed, or my grades fell below the standard, so I couldn't play baseball for the high school team. My freshman year, I played for like some club, and then I just quit baseball for whatever reason, and I stuck with wrestling, which was a sport that I was horrible at. So it was just, I still can't explain why to this day I did that. I made that choice, but that was my choice when I was, a freshman in high school. So yeah, those were some of I had some challenges growing up as a kid, and then we definitely didn't have money, and we bounced around from home to home. I kind of talk about that in my story. Lived in some pretty bad, sketchy neighborhoods, and that's all. I share a lot of that stuff in the book.
Your broken femur, that sounds like a crazy accident. Do you remember that, or was that too long ago, or was that something?
Oh no, I remember it. I remember, it's funny because I still have friends to this day that I remember were the two of many, but I remember some of my friends that were on my baseball team at the time coming up to me and like saying, "You're going to be all right, man. You're okay, buddy." Stuff like that. Like I remember this. I remember to this day, those exact people coming up. And then, cause I continued, like I said, the following season, I played baseball again and ended up going to high school with these kids and everything. And they all still remember it because I put it out there, a picture of myself on my Facebook page in my cast when I was 11 years old recently. And all those guys start commenting on it and stuff. And it's like, man, that's memories. even though it was, 27 years ago or whatever it is now.
We go through a lot of things in life. I'm just trying to figure out, like, maybe some of what got you like so much grit in wrestling. Was that like extreme pain, something that you experienced once, and then everything else that was painful after that didn't hurt nearly as bad? Or is there were you think you were able to use it, like, just even at a subconscious level, to where, well, this isn't that bad, or that kind of a thought would maybe pop into your head?
You know what? I wish I could say yes to that question, because that would be kind of like, oh yeah, man, I suffered this yeah, but to be honest with you, absolutely not. I was so mentally weak also, because I was never, I had never been challenged, like I was a baseball player mostly, and I played a little flag football, and I was like the quarterback, but I was never physically and mentally challenged, really until I started wrestling. And, I think it's funny because I look at my kids now, like my older son. My younger son is still on the fence about if he wants to wrestle or not. It doesn't look promising, but I hope he changes his mind. But my older son loves it. And I don't know if I told you this last time, but he ended up winning the state title this year, and the practices that he's going through and the mental toughness stuff that he has already at 9 years old. I'm just like, man, I never had any mental toughness at all when I was a kid. And it really started in high school, but I would say wrestling, but I also had a coach who was just a mentally tough guy that, took a father figure in my life, and it changed me. The mentality of wrestling and the mentality that he had, and that I was always around him, it changed me, and I think it changed me forever, really. So I didn't have that I couldn't put the two together back then, saying, oh, if I suffer a broken femur bone, I could suffer through practice. But I wish I could, but no, I was mentally weak before I started wrestling.
Do you think that the relationship you had with your coach was possibly a driving force that kept you coming back to, I almost said jiu-jitsu, back to wrestling, to have that father figure in your life and that sort of thing? Do you think maybe that, you go, you have a first year that's pretty tough, and but you go back? Was that just to get that connection with that father figure, you think, possibly?
So my coach in high school, so he was my coach, right, my freshman year. And I think I was just motivated a little bit differently than some kids, because he kind of stepped in. I mean, he was my coach, but he kind of stepped in and kind of took that role, I think, more like my sophomore year. And my freshman year, one of the assistant coaches at the time, and I may have said this on the previous podcast, and I'm sorry if I did, if I'm repeating myself, but one of my coaches was telling all the kids, like kind of towards the end of our freshman season, what camps they should go to, what wrestling camps they should go to. And when I asked the coach, hey, coach, what camp do you think I should go to? And he looked at me, he's like, Adam, you're not ready for a wrestling camp yet. I think you should just not go to a camp yet. Like, I probably didn't show it or talk to him or say anything to him at the time, but that, like, mentally and emotionally, like, that really, really motivated me. Like, kind of opposite of, I know some kids, you give them negative feedback like that, and they're going to shut down. Like, that motivated me. And I kind of was from that moment on, I was on a mission to come back and be the strongest kid and, be better at wrestling. And I really did. The next season I came back, because I literally joined the gym that was a mile away from my house, and I started running to the gym every day. And I would say it was like a run, walk, kind of thing, but I would run, walk, whatever, to the gym, work out for an hour or so, and then run, walk home. And I did this literally every single day. I would not miss a workout. And it started probably right after my freshman year in high school. And even to the point where my sophomore, junior, and senior year, I was going and lifting weights even after wrestling practices, because I was just, I kind of put myself on a mission, and it gave me a path, really. And then, like I said, the coach who came into my life as a father figure my sophomore year, I actually ended up quitting school after my sophomore year, and he got me back into the school and kind of put me on that path. And I think he knew what was going on. You know, I was out partying and I wouldn't get up for school because I would stay out late and sneak out of the house. And so he's like, all right, hey, I'm going to meet you at 5 a.m. tomorrow, you know, like on a Saturday. We're going to go do this workout, go do this hike. And, you know, part of me, I couldn't say no to my coach. And part of me was, for whatever reason, I had that internal drive as well as, like I said, the good support from him and from really my mom back at that time too, to wrestle and continue to improve.
Well, that's
so yeah,
a great wrestling coach gets you back going to school and on the right path. You talked quite a bit about your mom and some struggles that she had to go through. Did you have any siblings, or was it you and your mom? No, I
have a younger brother who actually is a black belt in jiu-jitsu, and he had some pro MMA fights, and he had some difficult health problems also. He actually got lung cancer the time that I won the Nogi Worlds in 2014. He was in the hospital with lung cancer and just had part of his lung removed. And so, you know, I have a brother who had gone through some stuff. And then I also grew up with him. He was 1 year younger than me. So we were fighting all the time, but we were best friends. You know, we made each other tough and better, but you know how brothers who are a year apart are. And then I had a sister who was 2 years younger than him, 3 years younger than me, that I grew up with. And her too, just by being around me and my brother, she's just like naturally tough, punches harder than most of my friends who are guys. And she never did any wrestling or anything. She was a cheerleader and softball player and stuff, but I grew up with them. And then my dad had 3 other boys that I didn't grow up with. They're quite a bit younger. They're all 3 in the military right now. And then my mom adopted, after I had already moved out of the house when I was in the military, my mom adopted her cousin's daughter. So now I have, and then my mom raised her, and then she actually lived with us for a couple of years in high school. My wife really helped her get through school. And now she's, you know, as close to us as my other brother and sister. So yeah, I had some siblings.
Yeah. Was your brother wrestling at the same time you were? Did he come into doing jiu-jitsu and MMA later on? Did he wrestle with you?
No. So actually it's kind of opposite. My brother never wrestled. We started doing jiu-jitsu together at this place in California, Japanese jiu-jitsu gym, when I was in high school. And it was very, very, I mean, maybe a couple months, you know, nothing where I could say, oh yeah, I've been training jiu-jitsu since high school, but it kind of gave us a little understanding of what it was. And then my brother never wrestled. My brother was actually more of like, he played baseball with us and stuff like that, but he was more of like partier, hang out, you know, just wasn't really into wrestling. And when I had left for boot camp, maybe around that same time, maybe a year or two later, my brother found jiu-jitsu. And my brother really got into jiu-jitsu big time as I was getting better at wrestling. And so I would go home, you know, on like vacations from the military or summer break in college, and we would go and we'd wrestle and do jiu-jitsu. But he really never had a wrestling background. So it was really like a wrestler versus jiu-jitsu guy. And my brother is really the reason that I started doing jiu-jitsu afterwards, because my brother, I used to smother him and just beat him up, because I was definitely like more physically strong and in shape than he was at the time. But then there was a time, like, I went and I rolled with him, and he kept, like, I couldn't get out of his guard. And I was like, why are you just keeping your legs wrapped around me? You know, and then all of a sudden he'd armbar me. I'd be like, oh, like, what did you just do? You know? And so he's the reason that I kind of started jiu-jitsu. And then he's the reason that I even found my professor, Lee Douglas, out here, because he came out here when I was wrestling and visited. I went and trained there. And after he went and trained there, and after I got done wrestling, he told me, you have to go try to train with this guy and do jiu-jitsu. And that's how I found really jiu-jitsu as far as like a full-time commitment. I mean, obviously I had a huge advantage going in there as a white belt, with people as like a guy who just got out of the Olympics and stuff in wrestling. But yeah, that was kind of my path to finding jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. Anybody who's done jiu-jitsu for a while has met really tough white belts, but none of them typically are wearing Olympic medals.
So I was a white belt for 1 week.
Okay.
And it was, because white belts kind of like Lee followed the IBJJF rules, but white belt's kind of like a discretionary time frame. There's a time on a blue belt, there's a time on a purple belt, time on a brown belt, but there's not really a time on a white belt. It's kind of a discretionary thing. And I knew some stuff already, because training with my brother and just, messing around and being an Olympic wrestler, there's a lot of things that transition over really well. And so I was a blue belt after a week. And he's like, I just can't keep you in a white belt and my students coming in and you kicking all their butts,
Yeah.
So, but then I progressed fast at jiu-jitsu because I still had that I'm an Olympian mentality when I started, and I was in there 5 days a week for a couple of years, 3-4 years, 5 days a week. And I would roll with everybody in the class. And then me and Lee would roll for 30 to 45 minutes nonstop after every single class, every single day. And it really boosted how quickly I adapted to jiu-jitsu.
Well, that's an accelerated way to learn jiu-jitsu, is just go a lot, and then also you had the vehicle to do that. You had your body was in good enough shape to do something like that, to train with everybody, and then go an additional large amount of time with another very skilled person. Not everybody can do that, but that's if you could do that, that's a really good way to start picking it up pretty quick.
Yeah, I think my biggest thing that I had to transition to was learning how to relax in jiu-jitsu, because wrestling is like go, explode. And so it's a little different than like traditional jiu-jitsu from what I see. There is some guys who are like that, attacking, but you got to also learn how to relax and on your back, and when you're in good positions and stuff like that. So that transition took me a little bit longer, but I was always on top in jiu-jitsu. I was never, in my first couple of years, I never would ever go underneath people, and there was no way anyone was going to get me underneath them. So, yeah.
Yeah.
wrestler mentality. And I finally bought into the system of jiu-jitsu, and I love it. So,
Adam, I follow you on Facebook. I recommend that everybody go find you on Facebook and follow you there. But you do quite a bit with a gi. Are you training more with a gi or more no gi or one or the other?
You know what? Honestly, the last couple months, I've been training a little bit less. But I go in I have a group of people, and it's only a couple people. So my school that I train at is Prime, but just with my kids' sports and everything, and they're off in the summers and all this stuff. So I try to go in before work, and I meet with a group of people. And literally sometimes it's 3, sometimes it's 4 people, sometimes it's 2 of us, but it's at 5 a.m. I go in and roll with these guys before work. And I base it on, so we have another Olympian actually, who was an Olympic team member in 2000. His name's Kevin Bracken. And he goes in there, and he's a lot smaller, but on the days he goes in, we always do nogi. And then on the other days that he doesn't go in, I leave it up to the guys that I'm training with. Right now I'm training with a guy named Nick Brown, and another guy named DC Hazen a lot. And these guys compete still. And so I do whatever they want to do. If they want to do nogi, we'll do nogi. If they have a tournament, like they just both had the Denver Open out here, and it was gi. So we did a lot of gi stuff before that. And then they're interested in doing ADCC stuff, so we're going to be doing a lot more no-gi. And I could care less. I like both. if I was going to say from a competition standpoint, I'm definitely better at nogi. Just because gi people, heavyweights in the gi are big stallers in my opinion. They like grip you and stall, right? Like all the big heavyweights in the gi, and I'm not talking about like BjjBrick, I'm talking like the masters guys. Seems like it's a game of who's going to end up on top, and it slows down. The gi really slows down my wrestling game. So I think I always end up on top in nogi and usually can control people a lot better because I usually end up in that position. So to answer your question, I love them both. If I was to go to say that I had to just put all my money on one competition, I would do nogi, but I actually enjoy training in the gi a lot too.
So you're a firefighter there. That's the same job I have. And you've experienced a freak accident, breaking your femur, sliding in baseball. That's kind of a thing that you didn't expect to happen. How do you ensure your safety while you're training hard, you're getting good rolls in, and that way you're not, putting your career at some risk or risking, missing a lot of work?
So that's something that I think about a lot, actually, because, I'm sure it's the same there. If I get hurt off duty, then it's on me. And if I can't physically perform a job and they don't have like an opening in like our human resources department or our dispatch or something like that, then I could be on unpaid leave for a while. So I definitely think about that kind of thing all the time. And I say this to everybody, like I'm not old yet, but I'm not young, I'm approaching 40. And I say this to people all the time who ask me about it. And I say, as long as you don't have too much ego and you kind of are smart with who you're training with, I think you're safe. Like for me, if I'm training with Elliot Marshall, right? He's probably, we have a couple good big guys out here. But Elliot's probably the best big guy out in this area, right? So if he gets me in a heel hook, which he's really good at, and I know he gets it, I'm just tapping. Like I'm not going to have too much pride and be like, oh, I'm getting out of this heel hook. No, I'm going to tap and be like, all right, you got me. Let's go again. So I really swallow my pride, and I'm smart. I don't care if we have another kid that I train with a lot named Daniel, and he's getting really, really good. And, he went from never being able to score a point on me to now I have to work pretty hard to roll with him. And if he got me in something where I'm like, I'm not going to have too much pride, I'm going to say, all right, you got me, let's go again, because I think that's when you get hurt, is when you refuse to tap because of pride. So I just try to take it smart. And then, like I said, I brought up Elliot as a heel hook, but Elliot's also like, I'll choose guys that I know, like even if Elliot gets me in a heel hook, he's not cranking it on my heel and going to try to blow out my knee. Like we have that mutual respect. So you got to kind of find who you train with. And, if I'm rolling with like a 20-year-old blue belt who's huge and trying to prove a point to me, then I'm probably going to roll with them a lot differently than I'm going to roll with the guys that I'm comfortable with. So yeah, just being smart, really.
Yeah. That's, it sounds like you're doing the best you can. I mean, things happen, freak accidents do happen, but you're training smart, like from your end, and then also your training partners are also training smart with you, and it sounds like a good system.
Yeah. And I think at a good school, they promote that, most good schools promote that. The competitive schools, they have it where the competitors are training as hard as they can. And I think that you have to, if you're going to be a competitor, if you're going to be a world champion, you have to train like you're going to be a world champion. Me right now at my point in my athletic career, I'm pretty much done, really. Like I don't have any plans to do any more tournaments or competitions. I kind of every once in a while will throw myself into something as a challenge. So I can't say for sure that I'm never going to compete again, but I don't have the desire right now. And so I realize that, I'm not trying, like I'm not going to fly to San Diego and try to go train with the Atos guys who are getting ready for the world championships. Like I'll go and train with a school with a bunch of 30 to 50-year-old guys who are doing it for fun that have careers too. I don't know. It's just kind of how you approach it. I think jiu-jitsu is for everybody, and there's so many different levels of it that, where at one point I was like, you have to train how you're going to compete. You have to go hard. You have to go and train. It has to be really like a full-time commitment. Over the years, I've learned that it depends on where you are in your jiu-jitsu game. And, that's why you see 60, 70-year-old guys and girls doing jiu-jitsu, because it really is for everybody if you're smart about the way you approach it.
Yeah. Looking at some of the stuff in your book here, you've definitely overcome a lot of obstacles. Let's just say you have a friend or like a teammate, and they're struggling to do well in jiu-jitsu. They go compete, they come back and they didn't go so well. What would you say to them to help them get past some of these hurdles?
I say this to every single person that asks me about competing. I say compete. If you just went to a tournament and you lost again, and there's a tournament next weekend, compete again. But you have to learn from every time you lose. Like for me personally, because I was such a competitive guy, every single time I lost a match, I felt like I learned more from that loss than I did when I won. And now whether you try to break down your wins too, right? Like when you're on, like for example, when I was at the Olympic level of wrestling, like I would try to break down my wins and my mistakes as well. But when I lost, it hurt more. And so I feel like I really emphasized on why I lost and how can I improve on my loss, if that makes sense. So you compete and you lose. It's part of the game. There's nobody out there that never lost or never loses. And like no one, right? Everybody's lost or will lose or whatever. You just got to focus on self-improvement from that experience.
Having dealt with the injury as well, what would you say is somebody who is like sidelined for a little while and frustrated with, broken femur or something, like going to be out for a while? What kind of encouragement or what kind of advice would you give to somebody who's going to sit out for a little while?
So I wish I would have known this when I was a kid, but, some of the similar things, but we have some really good examples at our school. We have a couple people, Daniel and a girl named Mo Black, they're both very competitive purple belts right now. And I'm going to just use them as an example because this is kind of what I would do. But Mo hurt her knee not too long ago. She's still in the gym every single day doing the things that she can do, strength training, upper body training. She was in the jiu-jitsu classes watching. And, I think, and from my experience, I had a couple injuries that sidelined me when I was wrestling for a little bit of time, but I was literally, that was my life. It depends on what level you want it to be at. If you're used to training 5 days a week and you get hurt and then you're not doing anything, you're going to fall way behind. But if you're used to training 5 days a week and you hurt your knee, for example, that's a common injury in jiu-jitsu, right? Knees and shoulders and elbows. There's still over half of the body that could still be trained. I'm not saying go out and roll, especially if you're not comfortable doing it like that. But I've talked to people like my brother, for example, he tore his bicep tendon in his arm. And he literally went and trained. He like kept that arm, I forget which one it was, tucked into his belt, and he rolled with one arm and two legs. And he's like, man, it really helped me work on my guard with my feet, So there's always ways. You can't give up because you have a little injury. Obviously don't go against what your doctor says. And if it's something more serious, that's different. But the basic common injuries that you see, like, I guarantee you if one of the top competitors right now hurts his knee, Gordon Ryan just hurt his knee, right? Not too long ago. I guarantee you he was still in the gym lifting every single day or doing something every single day with his upper body to keep his conditioning up and stuff like that. So I don't know. You just can't let it frustrate you enough to the point where you just quit.
Yeah. And then also avoid that taking a bunch of steps backwards and having to start all over or start at a further point back with your fitness.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
you experienced that.
There's so many different types of, fitness. Like you have so many different, really, the way I look at it is you have so many different types of energy systems, right? You have cardiovascular, muscular endurance, muscular strength, power, like all these things, they're different. And I think just because if you're hurt to the point where you can still do something, it's what, obviously there's some injuries that literally put you out of commission. So I'm not trying to go against what people's doctors are saying or anything crazy, but if you can do something, if you hurt your knee and you could go in there and do some conditioning with like battle ropes, or a lot of the gyms have like the arm bikes, or, whatever type of conditioning you can do, you still do it, still lift weights, still train, still stretch what you can. You have to stay active as much as possible, I think is kind of the key, really. Cause I think you stay in the habits, and a lot of people that fall out of the habits of working out and stuff, it's really hard to get back into it, because all it really is, like in my opinion, I work out every single day, either before work or at 9 a.m. I have a schedule, and that's, my wife knows that's what I do. My kids know that that's what I do. And I have this schedule, and that's my workout schedule. And it's because I developed the habit and the routine of doing it. So now it's not like I don't wake up and say, oh, should I work out today? Maybe I will later. No, at 9 o'clock, I'm at the gym. On the days I work, I'm at the gym at 4:45 a.m. And I get my work done, and then the day starts after that for me, so it's just building those habits and those routines.
Do you think, looking back at all your challenges and those sort of things, ultimately that helped to forge the athlete that went to the Olympics or was able to accomplish so much? Like, are the challenges actually a net positive?
Yeah, I think they are for me. Yeah, because I kind of look at, and I'm not saying this in like a negative way, right? Like, I have more financial stability than my mom did, like, so my kids grow up playing these sports. Like, I pay so much money for baseball. We belong to the country club. Like we're pretty fortunate, but I see kids who, they don't have that internal drive because like everything is given to them, like I had to literally earn everything I had. Obviously I had clothes on my back and stuff as a kid, but in high school I used to go mow yards, chop wood, like literally 5 days a week, so I could have money to buy nice clothes and nice shoes. And, the things I had, I earned. And I think that when you're used to having a work ethic in really any capacity, I think it carries over to other things. So whether it's sports or you're just a hardworking guy, if you're a businessman that is killing it because you're out there hustling, you have a great work ethic in a different way. And, I think that all that kind of stuff carried over for me at least, it definitely carried over. But, if I was given everything I wanted as a kid, and I don't know, if I didn't have any struggles, like I don't know if I would have had that type of mentality going into the sport that I did, because, just a super tough sport. I wasn't the most gifted athlete. I got where I was. I did have athletic ability. I wasn't like on the bottom of the spectrum, but I definitely wasn't on the top. And I got where I got with hard work. So I think it carried over for sure.
Looking at you've taken some things that have been hard and actually kind of turned them to an advantage and excelled with that. But many people get obstacles thrown at them, and it's like a wrench in the gears, and it kind of messes up their lives or gives them something they can't get past. What's the difference in those two people? Are they? Is it the people they have around them? Is it their attitude? What do you see as a big factor in making something like that?
You know what? It's a hard question because, we all have friends who are like negative, right? No matter what you do, we could be, if me and you were working in the same firehouse and we worked exactly the same rig, we went on the same exact calls, we did almost exactly the same job. Everything was the same. You know how it is probably as much as I do. There's always going to be one guy who's always negative, right? Like the guy who just sees everything as a negative way. I can't really explain why. But I do think other people influence other people. You are, in my opinion, a product of your environment. And, I think I definitely believe that's true for athletics. And that's like, for me, I try to put my kids in an environment where they're going to thrive in sports. I think it carries over with everything. If you're working with a bunch of guys who are always positive and positive attitude, and, I think it does carry over, but I do think it's probably an individual characteristic as well to a certain extent. So yeah, it's kind of a tough question really, but that's my take on it.
Yeah. And I've definitely been at fire stations where you do something and one guy is like, hey man, it's great to get on the big red truck and we're having fun. And the other guy is like, this is the worst thing in the world. It's like, it's the same thing is happening.
Another call.
It was that?
I said, we have the guys that, I'm pretty lucky. Most of my crew doesn't complain or is happy, but I've worked with some guys who, I worked for Denver, so we're a little busy, and I'm not even at a super busy firehouse, but, get called at 2 a.m. and you expect it, right? That's like the job that we have. But it's never, there's always a negative, like, vibe to some people, and then some people are like, all right, yeah, you guys want to go on this, like another call comes in, you guys want to take this call, so 23s or whatever doesn't have to get woken up. There's positive and negative. I think the positive definitely translates, I think, to other people, but I've also seen it the other way, where you put positive people around negative people, and the negative people could bring them down too, to where all of a sudden these people are complaining. And I think we all see it, especially in our kind of job, as a firefighter. I saw it as a cop too. And I think we're just around that type of environment where we work with so many different personality types that's just how it is.
Yeah. Yeah. It's important to kind of, I guess, manage the people who are around you a lot. If you could do that and make them have a good impact on your life, I think you're kind of setting yourself up for a good spot.
Yeah, for sure. I agree.
Where's the best place to go and find the book?
So the best place is Amazon. The book is called, so there's a lot of Believe and Achieve. So you have to either do Believe and Achieve Adam Wheeler, or the full title is Believe and Achieve Overcoming Obstacles to Excel. And in the book, I also talk about, some of my stuff with the police department, SWAT team, fire department, just kind of how I carried having a wrestling mentality into life after sport. And I do think it's a good book for any age. Pretty easy read, and I hope everybody that actually checks it out enjoys the story. Feel free to contact me on either Facebook or Instagram at the Adam Wheeler, and I'll reply to everybody that sends me a message. So appreciate all the support.
That's awesome. And I'll put links to everything, including, of course, the Amazon place there. There's really two ways to learn. I can learn from things I do myself, or I can learn from other people's. And you have a lot of lessons that you share in this book. And I would, it's a good move to learn from somebody who's experienced a lot of different things and done well with that. So, why not glean something from your experience, and I'm grateful that you're sharing that in this book.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. It was a struggle for me to decide to write it, and I'm glad I did, because I'm hoping that it could have a good impact on some people, especially if there's kids out there like I was, or anybody that just needs a little bit of motivation. I think it's a great book for that.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, that's great. And just thank you so much, Adam, for hopping back on here with me, and you're welcome anytime.
All right, thank you. Have a good one.
And we're back. I want to thank Adam for jumping on here and sharing a little bit of what's in his book with us. Like I was mentioning earlier, I read the book. I recommend it. Anybody in the jiu-jitsu world, or obviously in the wrestling world, would be interested in something like this. Even, if you like Olympic sports, or a lot of it is, I think it's fun to get a bond with an athlete and then see them struggle to do well, or to do well, or whatever. It's it's not exciting to see just, X name won this medal. That doesn't mean anything. But if you know the person or, you identify with them, that's why, like, it's important, you see, like, in the UFC and that sort of thing, they'll build their fighters. They want to put a name and a name that you understand who that person is a little bit more. You care who that person is. And with this book, I learned a lot about Adam, really learned a lot about what he has gone through, and some of the amazing stories he was able to share in the book. I really appreciated that. So thank you, Adam, for writing such a great book. I think it's going to hold up well, as far as representing you, and what you've done so far in your life. And man, what a great read. And if you think this is an interview that maybe a friend of yours would like, maybe you're like me, a jiu-jitsu guy, and you have some wrestling buddies, you might share this episode with them and hey, check this out. They interviewed an Olympic medalist for wrestling, Greco Roman wrestling. So point this their way, and maybe they'll meet you on the mats and do some jiu-jitsu with you as well someday. Last episode, we recorded it at the BJJBrick event. We did it before the event was actually over, so we really couldn't talk a lot about what was happening because a lot of it was still in progress. But I think this week we'll, instead of having a article of the week, we'll just kind of just recap that weekend and talk a little bit about what happened.
It was good to see you guys. I'll say that right off the bat. We've been doing this for a couple of years now, and this was the second time we all got together, so it was good to see you all. It was good to be up at Fox Fitness again for a weekend.
Yeah, it was good to see you,
Joe. Byron, not so much. But,
tired of him already, huh?
Yeah, I had to see him again this morning, which was a little rough. But, a great time. Met a lot of new people, learned a lot of stuff that, I've already implemented in my game. And, it's a week out now, and I had a person implement something that they learned from the seminar against, into their game, and they did it against me this morning. And I was like, hey, I remember that. And
nice.
It wasn't fun being on the other side of it. So, fun had by all. We all met new people and rekindled friendships and had fun and learned at the same time.
I didn't know you really kindle a friendship. I thought that was more of a romance thing, Gary.
See, Byron, you always got to drag it down that way. You can rekindle friendships, people we hadn't seen in a while. So, but Byron's just trying to derail me again.
That's true. That was a pretty obvious attempt.
Byron sometimes thinks that I'm going to be derailed easy. Like somebody who has that's a tumor. A brain tumor.
There's
Sorry,
an
I had to
Arnold
go back
impression.
to a very bad one.
Yeah. But it's not one, Gary, is what he was saying, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's not a tumor.
You leave me speechless, Gary. But yeah, I found the weekend great from a jiu-jitsu perspective. A lot of time on the mats, which, rolling 2 hours on Friday and then spending 4 to 5.5 hours on the mat on Saturday, and then another 2.5-ish, maybe close to 3 hours on Sunday. I was pretty wore out. That's not the pace I'm used to running my jiu-jitsu at. But really, never stop smiling. Really enjoyed getting to meet people I haven't met before and rekindling those relationships that people
Byron,
live a little further away.
I thought you could only rekindle romances, not
my
friendships.
My wife attended 2 of the seminars, so that could happen. It was a lot of fun. And then as a podcaster, I think it was pretty motivating to talk to some listeners and to share the mats with people who have been listening for a while and just to have those experiences. That's something that we largely podcast. We podcast from our own houses. We don't even see each other, and we try to help people do jiu-jitsu. But it's really good to meet some of the people that do that train and listen to us. So that from a podcast perspective, it was great.
Sometimes we do this podcast and. Byron pays us weekly, very weekly. We don't get paid at all. We do it for the love of the sport. And, sometimes you're thinking of, why do I do this? That can pop into my head. We all have a bunch of stuff going on, trying to clear, time. I mean, we got to do makeup. I always have to make sure I'm tan, for the live broadcast, tanning, working out, getting my six pack ready, to be on air, stuff like that, yodeling lessons. But, a lot of time, and sometimes you're like, what is the end result of this? And, I talked about it earlier, just talking to you guys and, on the podcast. I really think I've learned to handle situations better. I learned jiu-jitsu from just talking about it. But it was kind of neat just to hear some of the listeners just say, hey, I picked up this advice from something Joe said, and it's really helped my game. And, I heard that a lot. I picked up stuff that Joe said. I used it to my game. I picked up stuff that you said, Gary. I've used it in my game, and it's helped. I mean, I did not hear one time anybody said I picked up something Byron said, but it kind of told me, kind of helped me understand, how this podcast does help other people. Sometimes I think it's just Byron, Joe, and I, and nobody listening, and we just cracking jokes and having fun and talking jiu-jitsu. But other people are listening to it. Listen to Adam Wheeler today. Picking up some hints, going to buy Adam Wheeler's book, learning from it. So it's kind of neat just to hear other people's perspectives of what they've learned or how they've helped out and stuff like that.
Gary, one of the highlights from the weekend for me was we had a listener come up, drove more than an hour each day, one way to come train with us. He's a cancer survivor, tough blue belt, and we did a podcast together at the event. And Gary, you invited that guy over to spend a few minutes on the podcast with us, and to me that was awesome. Give him a chance to talk a little bit about jiu-jitsu and what it is in his life, and to me that's what it's all about, man. It was a great weekend, and that was definitely a highlight.
Yep, that was a highlight, and that goes back to, as Byron so rudely interrupted me, but rekindling relationships. Like I had friendships. I had met him last year. Talked a couple of times on Facebook, but it was just great to see him again this year. And I know he's back in Wichita this weekend, competed this morning. Hopefully, he had fun. But it's just neat to I know that if I ever travel out to Medicine Lodge, Kansas, I got a friend out there. I got a place to train. All the people we met. I know a guy from Dodge City. Last year we met a couple of people from Pittsburgh, Andy Dickey up there in California, people all over, our Kansas City crew that comes, our Joplin, Missouri crew that comes. Mike there from Joplin's always coming. It's just great. Seeing those people again and the support that they show that's not even counting, learning from Byron, learning from Gina, learning from Samir, seeing Jake again, having Jake, put all the work into this, Jake and Kim Fox. And it was just a great time.
Yeah. I want to say something. I want to throw some appreciation Byron's way. It seems like both events have sort of been billed as we're having two high-quality instructors on Saturday, and then, hey, stick around on Sunday, and the BJJ crew will show a few things too. But based on comments that some of my training partners were making on Sunday, Byron, your seminar was right up there with the other two. I mean, Saturday were two quality seminars by two quality instructors, and yours was right up there too. I heard one person say something like, I've not seen that move explained in such simple terms before. So good on you, Byron. And for the listeners, see us again next year for 3 more quality events.
Man, thank you, Joe, for relaying that. Makes you feel good. And, that's something that, as an instructor, I want to do the best job I possibly can, and I put some work into that, and I felt like I wanted to make a seminar that I had 2 hours, and I wanted to make a seminar that I could show it again at any point in time and know this is a 2-hour seminar. So I kind of researched how long stuff would take. I researched what would be appropriate to show in what order, and really I came up with almost 2 1-hour seminars that fit well together, like a puzzle piece, a 2-piece puzzle piece, which you could solve in minutes. Even Gary. So
I just want to say that Professor Gina had a good point, though, when it comes to your seminar. You announced that it would be the next day and said, gi, no gi, wear whatever you want, but there will be some lapel chokes. So, maybe some clarification.
She was quite. She wanted me to pick one, and it's at the end of a 3-day weekend of people training. A lot of people from out of town, and if you don't have a clean gi, you're good with no gi. If you prefer no gi, that's fine too. And I even said there's some lapel chokes that you could do on your teammate, but your teammate will need to find somebody else to train that on. It's just how do you do a back seminar without showing little details that I'm really happy to share about the bow and arrow choke that a lot of people do incorrectly, and it really cleans up your bow and arrow, makes escape almost impossible. It makes it a lot more difficult to escape, and just a couple of those details. So I felt like I need to show something. The gi stuff was very minimal, I thought, and I think it applies to just jiu-jitsu. Get the back, and you're being in shape.
And I think there's a conceptual idea there. A lot of people, when they do the bow and arrow choke, I was going to say when they teach it, but maybe not so much. Maybe I just mess it up when I do it. I see a lot of people when they do it, and the spines almost get 90 degrees with one another. They really get out like in that bow and arrow position. And Byron, I notice you don't ever really move from the back control position. You grab the pants and just twist off just the tiniest little bit, and that's a good detail. So appreciate it, man.
The reason why the bow and arrow, I think, is so popular is that you just need to grab that collar and you could go. That's the same as the problem, is because I really recommend spend a little bit more time on addressing your grip. Like what you do with most your chokes that are gi dependent, you need to have a good grip and a proper grip. So by spending a little bit more time on your grip, and not just going right away, you don't have to do nearly as much movement. You stay a lot closer. You keep their head in a position where they can't get your arm out from behind their head, and they're basically stuck there. I think that's people get in a hurry. They see the neck, they get the collar, and they just pull the trigger and they go. Take a little bit of time, feed the collar, and get it quite a bit deeper, and you have better control of their head the whole time. Without showing the technique, that's. But thanks for the kind words, Joe. Gary, maybe someday I'll hear some kind words.
Byron, I did learn a lot out of your seminar, really helping me with my back control. I did drill it this week. And when I was talking about had it used on me today, I actually had some of your back control. One of my training partners used that on me today that he learned from you. Actually, he did not go to the seminar. Bad guy. But he learned it, from you but it wasn't fun trying to escape out of that back control.
Yeah, he was one of the beneficiaries of my pre-lessons and my planning. I was like, hey, let's work on this back control stuff because I'm trying to realize how long this takes to teach and that sort of thing. So, well, I think a good weekend had by everybody I talked to. If we had a grumpy person, I didn't get that message across.
No, and Jake killed it at the barbecue.
Yeah.
So, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Good host.
That's not a surprise. He does that basically every time he barbecues, so he does a good job. A quick Q&A. Hopefully this is not forever. It says quick, or the goal is to do a quick Q&A, but the question might be a little deeper. How do you guys, or do you have a process or bringing a new technique into your game? Not just learning a technique, but actually bringing it into where you perform it, and when you're rolling and training or competing, you could bring it into your game.
I was going to say, yeah, I do. You're saying not just drilling it, but bringing it to actually live rolling, correct, Byron?
Yeah, like let's just say you Gary, you don't do very many. You do everything. Let's just say you don't do very many arm bars, and so suddenly today, hey, you know what? I need to clean up my arm bars and start bringing those in. How do you do that?
Yep. Okay. Well, first of all, I'm going to drill like crazy. I'm going to drill. I'm going to study, try to get that going. But that's just the first part. I got to understand the basics behind it. I've got to, work it with a non-resisting opponent. I've got to, get a little bit of resistance going in there. And then once I start rolling, I'm going to look for that all the time. I'm not looking while I'm rolling to win or lose. I'm looking to learn. So, I'm going to go out there first and I'm going to try it on training partners that are less skilled than I am. That's where I'm going to have the best luck. So I'll start it off there. I'll start it off on newer people, and I'm not going to go out there and, brutalize somebody. I'm going to go, maybe let's say I'm working for an armbar from the guard. I'm going to, pull off an armbar from the guard, against that newer person. Let that person also work, other positions too. But I am going to be looking for that. I'm not going to look. I'm going to let them try to get out of it too. I'm going to put it in that position, mess around with a little bit, mess around with control, because control is huge. I'm going to be trying to pull it off with everybody I roll with. And I'm going to start with the lesser skilled people, and I'm going to keep working my way up as I start pulling it off and learning the nuances on lesser skilled people. Then I'm really going to start going up, classes. I'm going to start trying to pull it off on the seasoned blue belts and purple belts and just go from there. But the key is, you can't just try it one day. I see so many people say, hey, I'm going to work on my arm bars, and they work on it one day or two practices, and then they go back to their regular stuff. If you really want to get good at it, you've got to put the time into it. You've got to, put weeks, put months into it. You still don't want to quit trying other stuff, but you're not going to get good at any move overnight very quickly. So you do need to put some time into it. You do need to study. You do need to ask training partners for tips on it. You do need to check some online references, for tips and just soak up as much knowledge and repetitions as you can.
Yeah, I think something I would add, Gary, and it kind of goes hand in hand with what you're saying. Maybe it's a little earlier in the process is, first of all, deciding whether or not it's a technique that you want to add to your game, and then deciding where it's going to fit into your game. Because it's one thing to see a technique and think, oh, that's interesting. I think I could hit that. But maybe it doesn't fit anywhere in your game. Maybe it is most frequently hit and most effective from some guards that you don't play. So maybe it's not really worth your time putting into your game. So that's one thing that I look at. And then the other thing I look at is, where does it fit into my game? Because you talked about the progressive resistance. And as you start getting into rolling live and at higher intensities, you have to be able to hit this naturally. And it needs to be a technique that comes from a position or from a transition that I'm already accustomed to making. And I need to find out where that is. So those things are important to me.
Both of you guys, that's good input. For me, when I see something new, I try to just, similar to, I guess, Joe's approach is, what can I do that I'm already decent at to get to position to where I could attempt this? And then if it, succeeds or fails, what's going to happen within my already pre-existing game that I could try it again?
Exactly.
Like if I want to try a new guard, I know it's going to get passed more than my current guards that I'm comfortable playing. So I need to look at, okay, when they pass, how are they passing? What kind of a side control are they getting? Are they getting full mount? Are they passing right to my back? And then look at those escapes and then recover that same guard to try it again. And so just look at how does it match up with your current game, and then how could you get the most out of that? Because if it doesn't match up at all, like you were saying, Joe, you might need to. It doesn't match up. I don't work De La Riva guard, so anything, a submission from De La Riva is going to be very tough for me to pull off. Maybe just spend a month working that basic De La Riva hook and working on off balancing the person, and then start to bring in other stuff. It is important that it fits well with what you're already doing, and if it's not too far offline from what you've got going on. But if you have a question that you want us to answer, kind of like we attempted to there, send it to bjjbrick@gmail.com, or you could text it to our Facebook group through the little messenger system there, or Facebook fan page through that messenger system there. We do have a Facebook group, and it's full of some of our Patreon supporters. If you want to support the podcast, you enjoy this, you want to help us out, we'll mail you out for a little while 2 5-inch BJJ Brick Gi patches. they're different. We have the legacy patch, and then we have the new patch that features all three amigos on there, and it's good to be finally update that thing. It's been like in the back burner forever, and then I was like, I gotta have this done. I want to get it done before the camp so I could have it at the camp. And just one thing to share with people who are there, and then kind of enroll it. So I had a deadline that really helped me get it organized. So check out the new podcast art. It's on the podcast, should be right there. Also the patch that comes with it. So I'll just throw two of these patches in an envelope. I'll throw a sticker in there. Hopefully the mail carrier will take it. It's not too bulky, and that's a token of appreciation for being willing to pay us or pitch in $1 per episode if that's what you think it's worth. Want to quick shout out to our friend Rich, who was actually in Wichita not that long ago. He was a Patreon supporter. He doubled his contribution to $2. Thank you, Rich, for the extra pat on the back, and it really means a lot to us that and like this has happened a couple times before. I guess maybe just once, I don't remember, but it makes you feel like I'm glad they're still listening, the Patreon supporters, and that they still support the show after all the things we might say, or I don't know if we offend somebody, or maybe we just bore them. Too much time of me talking, not enough of Gary or Joe, and that could bore anybody, and they might leave. And I'm worried that their Patreon will just keep ticking away, and I don't want them to be contributing if they're not actually enjoying the show. So when we see that up, somebody go from $1 to $2, they're still listening, they're still loving it. So thank you, Rich, for increasing your contribution to $2. That really means a lot to us. And if you're a current Patreon supporter, you have not gotten the 5-inch BJJBrick patch because I just got them, the new one. So if you want the new one, send me an email, bjjbrick@gmail.com. Tell me your name so I can make sure you're a Patreon supporter. I'll match you up there, and say and an address, and I'll send you out the new patch. Get you updated there, my friends, because you're supporting us, and I want to do the best we can to show that appreciation. So I'll be mailing out some of those this week, hopefully. Guys, I had a great week. A little recovery from last week, though.
Yes. Yeah, I recovered on the airplane. Little extra nap, and
and then his blood pressure went up when he found out he was in New Orleans.
What impression is that, Gary?
He recovered, and then he had a nap, but then he found out he was in New Orleans, and he was kind of shocked, so his blood pressure went up. So he had to, then deep breathe and get back into his good yoga poses or whatever he does.
Well, it's okay because I work in one state and live in another. I'm in New Orleans oftentimes, and I feel like I'm in the witness protection program when I'm there, Gary. So maybe you can relate to that. I don't know.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that.
All right. Well, until we come back again, I want you guys to stay sweaty, my friends.
And don't forget to buy Adam Wheeler's book.
Yeah, train hard, train smart, read Adam Wheeler's book, and get better, man. We'll see you guys on the mats.
Yeah, don't just buy it, read it, and then and benefit from it.
Gary's like, next level.
Yeah, read it, benefit from it, and then tell all your friends about it. Adam's a great friend of the show, and we're not just saying that to pitch Adam's book. Like Byron said, he actually got a little teary-eyed reading that book, when he made the Olympic team. Adam's here to help you out, and his story will inspire you, and that's what it's all about. Inspire you to reach new goals. So check out, read, refer, give him reviews online. Adam Wheeler's book.
Yeah, and some of his instructionals are top notch too. I was watching a little bit earlier on the snap down, and so if you're looking for some good instructionals, starting from the feet, controlling your opponents, check out some of that stuff he's got as well.
Yeah, he's got that on BJJ Fanatics.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Good stuff there too. Yeah, we didn't mention that at all. All right, well, we'll try it again. Stay sweaty, my friends.
And don't forget to read Adam Wheeler's book.
Train hard, train smart, get better, guys. We'll see you on the mats.
I like it. Double ending.
Thank you for listening. I hope you find the time today to roll. After all, the best way to get better at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.